Every citizen would own a share of the central bank. I'll explain why. The only way you're going to solve the paradox of cheap credit fiat currency, which is trying to reduce the incentive of the citizen, as you remember from what I said earlier, is based on them reducing the level of their real debts by increasing the amount of currency in the system, devaluing. So the only way you're going to solve the paradox of cheap credit fiat currency versus inflated asset prices, which are distorting price signals via manipulation by banks, anyone who lends short and invests long, or commodity speculators who are betting on the margin of the price of a commodity rising or falling, and then if a company if they're selling off those things as insurance almost through credit default swaps, what investors will refer to as or banks will refer to, or economists will refer to as DCS, credit default swaps. CDS, credit default swaps. There are speculators who have no interest in producing utility of those goods and services or commodities for the wider economy. All they want to do is push firms and their workforces into bankruptcy so that they'll default on the money that the speculator has lent to them, with the speculator acting as though he was a bank, but he's an individual, by lending, investing long and loaning short. In real terms, some investors invest short and lend short as well. They want that investment to mature, and sometimes the only way to do it is to make the firm default, which is basically fraud, because they're claiming insurance on assets that they don't own. And that's why people are losing their houses, and that's why firms are going bust, because banks are leveraging out mortgages or hundreds of times over, and speculators are preying on that. Some people would say that's a natural correction, but it doesn't seem to be producing any benefit for individuals other than the speculator himself or herself. So the only way you're going to solve the paradox of cheap credit fiat currency versus inflated asset prices, which are distorting price signals via manipulation by banks, anyone who lends short and invests long, is to have national communities, i.e. encapsulated, US or EU, to own our nation's central banks as cooperatives, with each citizen being a shareholder. So this makes citizens responsible for the real level of price signals in terms of the value of currency. It's still, as I explained, it still might not reflect completely perfectly the real value of money in the system, because not everyone knows everything that is going on in terms of technology extracting utility from resources, but it's a better way of doing it perhaps, but I'm going to develop this idea. The responsibility is that they're not going to want the price of money to be too high or too low, because that's going to be reflected in the share price that they get and the return they get from being owners of the central bank of the nation. It's also going to be a barrier to anybody we don't want to be a citizen in the country. For instance, somebody is here illegally without citizenship, or is engaging in any kind of criminal activity where people are going to not be responsible to their duties as a citizen, because of course, citizenship could be seen as a birthright, or it could be seen as based on someone's behaviour as a citizen. That is kind of dangerous territory, but it would have to be solved by lawyers. What is most rational, obviously, although nations are developed from individuals, and the idea that the individual is nothing if the nation is everything, and that idea has been used before, but of course, if you devalue the value of individual citizens, you're devaluing the entire value of the nation as a concept and as a true biological entity, because you'll be removing individuals. And of course that is what finished off the Spartans, as fewer and fewer people were citizens and more people were used as slaves. Eventually Sparta was overthrown by Rome, but not before it had destroyed itself from within. But the idea that no private goods should come before national society's good is something which I think is positive, because it means that anyone who is a capitalist, for instance, is in service to the state for the benefit of everyone, which includes not only his workforce but for the good of the whole nation and the community and society, of which he has got the majority of benefit from, via that society's protection. But if you have a cooperative model society and economy, where the cooperative model, rather than being one cooperative which is a monopoly, but competing cooperatives in different sectors of the economy, as well as cooperatives within the same sector competing against each other, as well as every citizen having a share in the central bank. That's going to stop elitism and corruption and rogue central banks, because people, if they do something wrong, the management of the central bank, who also have shares, and it would not be in their interest to get rid of the value in their own shares, then it's also going to make all citizens be interested in economics and to understand the true value of their work and decision making, i.e. rationality, their thinking in terms of politics, economics, and their role as citizens and defenders of the Constitution and civilization. Okay, so the other concepts that I've explored before in my video is that you would have central banks giving money at the same level of credit, same level of interest to all citizens and all firms, rather than a privileged client relationship between investment and high street banks or Main Street banks, the Americans would call them, to the central bank, which is basically a mafia type system, of nepotism and corruption